If I told you there were 50 survival games on console, you may well laugh. It's only PC that get all the survival games, Jade. We don't have a lot on Xbox or PlayStation, but there really are 50 games if you look hard and deep enough, and I've done just that today. I have recorded this video in a big block and then realised that an hour and maybe 5 minutes talking about these games is maybe just a wee bit too long. So I'll split it into two. We're going to cover up 50 to 26 today. So in effect, we're pretty much listing the worst survival games you can play. But for the sake of my countdown, I'm still doing it from 50 to 26. So straight away, I'm going to start talking about the worst survival games, the ones that you need to avoid. But wait, before you fast forward, just wait 1 second. How do I come up with this mathematical way of determining which are the best survival games and how to rank them? I separated it into 3 categories and I gave each one of them categories 5 points. Survival is obviously really important. How important is the survival mechanics to the gameplay? What kind of survival elements does it have? That gets you a pointage out of 5. Then I looked at fun, like, is it a good game? Like, is it something interesting to play? Is it doing something fresh? Is it something new? Or is it just something really, really polished and great? Hit me with another 5 points for that category. And then 5 points for support. I'm talking about either updates. I'm talking about the state of the game in 2021. Is it something you should go and touch? Has it had lots of bug fixes? Has it had any controversies? That's what we'll be focusing on in the third category. You can tag so many games with the survival genre, but I've really focused on the ones that have either a multitude of crafting or surviving against elements. There won't be any horror survival games in this list as I just don't play them, so I can't really rank them, and I don't think they're really suitable for this category list either. Agree, disagree, let me know. Go and check out the previous list videos I've done to see my top 30 survival games of last year. And please do leave maybe a couple of the worst survival games you've ever played on this video and save the best for the next one. As always, the home of survival, giving you the info, the guides, the tutorials and the gameplay first. Make sure you're subscribed if you ain't already, really helps the channel out. And if you can, maybe even think about becoming a JPG YouTube member today. Alright man, just get on with the bloody video. Memories of Mars was meant to be Rust in space, kind of. Unfortunately, it's boring as heck. The planet of Mars is not the one to explore and shoot other players on. Well, maybe kind of. It mixes in PvP zones and you are meant to go and build your bases up, progress, unlock new unlocks and weapons and ways to get more resources. They took away the vital component though that made me interested in this game, proper PvP. On PC they had it for a year and a bit where you could actually raid other players, but just for the console launch they removed all full PvP servers. Straight after launch they pretty much abandoned this game. Do not touch it, do not go near it unless it's like 2 or 3 quid and you just fancy something a bit different for maybe single player. It never set the world alight on PC, so it was a miracle it even managed to get on console. It's not the world's worst running game, albeit 100 million little bugs, but certainly that lack of updates and the way they abandoned it and changed things up just for launch, this absolutely was a console cash grab. You spent years and millions developing your own game engine, so what do you do if you're Bohemia? You decide to go and use Unreal instead for your next game. Vigor is a free to play, post-apocalyptic, kind of battle royale, more along the lines of Escape from Tarkov I guess. You take your loot off map, build up your own little home. I love the setting of this game, I love the looks, the characters, the shooting is absolute dog poo though. One of the worst I've played in a long time, there's just something really off about it. They also have this weird currency where you can buy insurance. You're meant to originally lose all your items. If a player shoots you, you can take them on that map, or whatever you've managed to scrounge. But they added insurance that you get to keep percentage of your stuff, basically meaning the risk has been removed, hence why it's such a low placing on my list. It is supported by updates, as you would expect from this type of game, but they also launched it pretty dodgily, doing Founders Packs for a multitude of different consoles on Xbox, then the PlayStation release, then the Switch release, even though it actually came out of early access when it hit its 1.0 on Xbox. You had to buy these Founder Packs and they were available for a few months before going free to play for everyone, so yeah, another reason I didn't really like the way they done this game. If you can handle the janky shooting, you may enjoy it, but not for me. I was one of the first to break the news about Atlas coming out when they accidentally leaked this trailer on the Art Survival Evolved main YouTube channel. Was it a DLC? Was it its own game? It ended up being its own game and maybe it should have stayed as paid DLC. Atlas is meant to support 40,000 players in a huge sprawling survival MMO. It barely has about 4,000 playing it at the moment. Even the Xbox launch couldn't really help boost its numbers that much. During its time of development, they left it for 8 months without any significant updates as they switched lead designers. Now they've got some stability. The last 6 or 7 months have been a lot better, adding more content and fleshing out the MMO aspects of it. It's notorious for the way it launched, with multiple delays and all sorts of problems and issues, bugs and stuff that they just didn't test it. Typical wildcard fashion, never testing their game fully or giving developers time to fix all the stuff I'm sure that QA did find. And they paid a bunch of top tier streamers to pretty much shit on it because they was expecting Sea of Thieves and it turned out just to be an Ark ripoff. It may eventually come good, but I wouldn't really go near this until you see full release and some decent reviews. Ape, no kill, ape. Alright. Don't get salty because I called one of these ape-like creatures an actual ape. I know there's some nerds out there that are going to point it out and say they're not technically apes. Ancestors Humankind Odyssey is a survival game where you go through different evolution stages, learning how to pretty much use weapons and tools for the first time, trying to get away from big anacondas and all sorts of tigers, bears and something else maybe. The game had some interesting ideas, but it's boring and repetitive as hell. Learning from a mistake ending up being just a pretty much not enjoyable experience after the first hour or so. If you ever see How to Survive going cheap for a couple of quid, it might be worth picking up just to have a night in with your pals in this co-op survival game. It's filled with blood and gore and over the top weapons and armour pieces as you fight zombie hordes going around nice little grayscale maps. It's got an interesting vibe to it. There's a zombie apocalypse in London. You need me to do the voiceovers. Why didn't they call me? Zombie is the port of the We Zombie U classic from years ago, and it's okay. It's got some nice little features. The main one being that when you die, it's more of a roguelike. You have to actually then go and try and find your zombified corpse and get your loot back. That is one of the more interesting features of Zombie. So yeah, sure, give it a shot if you haven't already picked it up somehow. I'm sure it was on PSN Plus and Games of Gold or something like that. But yeah, absolutely give it a shot. It only placed so high mainly because it is still a bit of a action story-led game rather than just full-out survival. A futuristic yet retro England in the 60s, this is what you get with We Happy Few. It's an interesting concept. It's got 3 main characters with 3 main storylines, and it's got a big component of survival if you choose that game mode. A variety of different ways that you can make it easier or harder, and it does offer a significant challenge for survival fans. There are lots of bugs, there are still lots of issues with it. It's been supported with DLC and updates over its release, but it's still just a bit janky at heart. But there's something about this game that compels me to go back to it time and time again to see if I can actually finish it off. There's something quite interesting, quite comical about the characters that you meet. So yeah, not everyone's cup of tea, but We Happy Few is definitely something you should give a shot. I ain't a snob when it comes to how a game looks. You might consider some games a bit kiddified and they maybe don't deserve to be in the survival genre, but I look at a game like Unturned and I just see maybe some possibilities of something unique and different. And it has got some cool features, like classes, running around maps trying to avoid the affected, as well as players. It is a PvP game where you can get taken out by others. Starting life as a Roblox knockoff before eventually becoming its own thing, Unturned was on PC for free to play for years before bundling all the DLC and the skins and stuff as a fully fleshed product on Xbox and PlayStation. I'm not saying it's a great game, it's got a few bugs and a few issues with it apparently, and the updates for it are already drying up, but it's definitely something you should try if it's a few quid. If you're a true survival fan on console, you've come to expect a good few games that are going to be filled with bugs, problems and issues. Surprisingly, Metal Gear Survive isn't as bad as everyone makes out if you look at it from the point of view of a survival game. Sure, if you're a Metal Gear Solid fan, it's an abomination, but it's actually got a lot going for it in terms of the systems. There's oxygen that you need to explore some of the areas, you need to gather resources, there's zombies of course, and there's all sorts of different ways that you can build up your base or your settlement, and just a variety of different challenges. It hasn't had any updates in nearly 3 years, and the updates pretty much only went out for about 6 months after its release. But there's no doubt about it, there's some meaty systems here, if a little bit buggy and janky gameplay to go with it. But that's survival, right? Wild 8 is another one of them cheap sort of survival games that's very janky, got lots of bugs, but it has got a bit more of a hardcore survival experience, and it's a bit different as well from the usual sort of stuff. Sadly, they took away the big component that made it a hit on PC, which was multiplayer, so it's only single player on console, and like I said, it doesn't look like they've been getting many updates and fixes. This game had controversies with the lead developers leaving pretty much only after a few months of getting it out in early access, and they are now working on that day before game. The publishers took on the rental and got some other people to finish it off, and then suddenly just put it out on console. Cash grab? Maybe. But I would say it's got some solid survival mechanics in it as you fight off wildlife, trying to get resources and stay warm. Give it a shot if it's on sale. The survival purists will say it's not a survival game, but Mad Max is, because you've got to take care of your car, you're always on the lookout for more gas and fuel, and of course it's got that post-apocalyptic setting. So yeah, I'm putting it in survival, goddammit. You know what you're going to get. It's a bit of an oldie, but it's an open world RPG action game where the focus isn't on base building but taking care of your car. So yeah, you'll surely see it on Games Pass or cheap in a sale. Why not give it a go if you haven't already? An oldie but a goldie. Kona is a bit of an old one as well, and it relies on you keeping warm as you explore a narrative driven kind of walking simulator kind of mystery survival game. It is pretty light on survival, hence why this game and many others I've only given 1 or 2 points. But it is a fantastic little game, so absolutely go and give it a try. An old one, if you can dig it out, I'm sure you'll find it pretty cheap and something a bit unusual, a bit more interesting. Another survival game that mixes up a little bit of simulation, Sheltered, is an oldie. They've just announced Shelter 2 as coming out very soon, and this is definitely something you should give it a go, particularly if you own it on a portable system. It's very reminiscent of Fallout Shelter as you guide a family, keeping them safe while gathering resources during a post-apocalyptic event. There'll be people trying to take your stuff, and you've got to manage your resources carefully as you guide each family member through their day-to-day, hopefully surviving against all sorts of stuff, including bears. The ultimate aim is to build a rocket ship to maybe go and explore other planets. Yeah, I haven't delved too deep into this one, but I did give it a try when it was a game preview years ago on the Xbox. Space Engineers on PC was one of the very first early access style games to go through development. This space voxel simulation building game has now made it to the Xbox with mixed results. On Xbox One, I still believe you can only play with one other player, whereas on an Xbox X and the next series of consoles, you can play with up to 4. There are some limitations also with the building. It really is a struggle getting this game on a console. But it has improved over time. They have been updating it and have been adding little bits of free expansions as well as paid DLC, and it seems to have evolved into a nice little community for this game. So if you want to get to grips with one of the most complex systems, ways that you can build all sorts of contraptions, spaceships, cars, vehicles and bases and automation, and Space Engineers may scratch that itch, and hopefully one day it will appear on the PlayStation 2. I debated long and hard about putting Generation Zero in this list. It's a post-apocalyptic game, it's open world, it has crafting, and you face a deadly army of mechanised robots. But there isn't really many survival other mechanics in it. You can't forage from the natural environment, it's just purely picking up loot from houses and cars. And while they recently added a little bit of horde defense mode, it comes across more like a mission where you have to defend a certain area and you can go ahead and build and spend time in it, but it isn't a fully fledged open world base building experience. If Generation Zero ever implements any of that, and obviously any kind of need for drinking or eating, I think I would put it a bit higher. It had problems at launch, it was accused of being just a bit of an average game, but it definitely has got some highlights. The atmosphere is fantastic, the open world environment is stunning, and yes, it does have a nice little 80s vibe going on for it. Call me in the 90s when you get some more survival mechanics. You'll hear that a lot from me. If games are cheaper, if they're made by smaller teams, I'm much more forgiving of any bugs or issues and problems. But that doesn't necessarily mean you can forgive everything. Open World Country isn't the world's worst game, but it has enough issues at launch that I would say stay away from it just for now. Give it a few months, see if any improvements come, especially for missions and stuff that really stop your progress. Now, progression is a key point of this game as you hunt the wilds of Northern America on different maps, huge maps in fact, as you hunt all sorts of creatures, take up challenges and even do a little bit of fishing. It's got some cool elements to it and a lot more survival than I thought. This is a really tough survival game in fact. impact much more than you give it credit for. So yeah, I think in a few months this will shoot up my rankings if I did it again. But right now, even at its cheap price, I would say stay away, because them game breaking bugs could really hurt the experience for you. At various points it felt like I was playing a 360 game, other times I felt like I was playing a Series X. They've got some good moments in this for sure, but yeah, at the moment it's just one of them games that's just a bit too janky and a bit too buggy. Citadel Forged with Fire was kind of just about a survival game. It didn't technically have any food, any water needs, and it's pretty much you just being a Harry Potter character running around the world, taming creatures and using your magic to take on other players. And that's where the survival comes in for me, surviving against other players on PvP. You can play at PvE of course as well, and then you've got all the other mechanics that you associate with these types of games. Building huge massive castles, taming creatures as I mentioned, and conducting and constructing all sorts of different ways to give yourself extra magical spells. There's lots of foraging, there's lots of gathering and crafting in this game. It's a shame it took so long to get some content out for it during its launch on PS4 and Xbox, and to be honest it definitely could have done with another maybe 8 or 9 months actually in development. Over the time though, they have added more content to it, they've fleshed out some of the stories, and they've added more quests as well as some extra end game to really keep this game going. It's a bit dead on the officials, but again, find it on discount, it might be worth a pluck if you really enjoy games like Ark and Conan. It's such a shame the PvP never really worked out, too many complaints of not really balanced gameplay and not being able to keep your bases maybe going with all sorts of magical turrets and stuff. Citadel Forged with Fire was a rush release for console in the end, and it showed. Minecraft versus Ark Survival Evolved, and you get Pixark with all the bugs as well. It had a good idea and I was super excited about the idea of this. I thought it could honestly take over the survival space, but bugs and jankiness and really just not a very good look in certain instances made this game a bit of a slog when it did launch on the Xbox. It's now available on Xbox, PlayStation and Nintendo Switch, and console fans have finally received the Skyward DLC or free expansion that was put out on PC over a year ago. So yeah, you might as well give it a shot if you've got young ones or family. They'll love the mix of that Minecraft and the survival aspects. But don't be fooled, this is Ark, all in just pixel form. It's hard as nails still. You still got to do a lot to tame some of the creatures, but it has got some more stuff going for it like the magic. So yeah, I've put it up high purely because it is such a rip-off of Ark Survival Evolved and Minecraft. This War Mine is another one of them games that mixes together survival with simulation. You pretty much will not be controlling a super soldier, you'll be controlling a group of civilians trying to survive in a besieged city. Lack of food, medicine and lots of danger from snipers and hostile scavengers. It's a definite different take on survival. Available on all consoles and for sure one of the most awarded over its lifetime, especially its DLC. Give it a try if you ever get the chance. Frostpunk is a combination city builder and survival experience, as you have to make key decisions about your colony, your crews, keep them alive, whether or not you're going to deal with infections, and how to keep them warm in a post-apocalyptic world that's gone cold. Frostpunk is a simulation game first, foremost, but them survival mechanics are pretty hardcore and it makes for a challenging, different take on the survival genre. So give it a try if you like any sort of simulation game and survival. Frostpunk marries them two perfectly. Fade to Silence is a post-apocalyptic third-person game where you actually do a bit of city building as well. You pretty much got a settlement that you can fill with NPCs and decide what kind of buildings you want. That'll help you get more resources. It's a harsh survival game, this one, really difficult, and it takes a bit of a slog to get through the first stages. But once you do, it opens up a bit more, and if you can see past the bugs and the problems, then this game has got some really good stuff in it. There's lots of hunting and there's lots of monsters, Cthulhu-inspired creatures that you're going to have to worry about, as well as horrible storms. And yes, you can pet the doggo. You'll need to, as it will have a sleigh that you can use to travel around the smallish style maps. It's kind of almost like a roguelike in its nature. You can make it a bit easier if you're finding it a bit hard. If you come into any issues or problems though, don't expect any fixes anytime soon. They pretty much only had one update after it launched and that was it. Imagine an indie team made Dark Souls, but then they added more survival mechanics to it, and alright, it wasn't maybe as good graphically. That game's called Outward, and surprisingly, after what I just said, it's pretty okay. It's got split screen, it's got co-op mode, and there's a hell of a lot you can do. There's no technical base building, but latest updates and DLC give you the chance to build your own settlement, and there's a whole bunch of updates that have gone into the game ever since its release. A bit of a cult classic. If you can ignore some of the rough edges around it, this game will offer absolute bundles of story and them survival elements, trying to make sure you've got enough resources to go for your next adventure and really planning ahead where you're going to go and what you've got on you. It's a real different take on the RPG genre and that survival third person genre too. So yeah, I felt this was a bit too janky for me when I first played it, but definitely want to give it another try in the future. If I've had Mad Max, I've got to have Days Gone. Yes, I know you're going to get spaghetti upsetty sometimes looking at some of these games in this list, but you are pretty much doing the same thing, taking care of your bike, going around, gathering resources, crafting, getting upgrades, new weapons, and it's got a lot going for it in that respect. But then chuck in the zombie hordes, and I really do think that lends itself more to survival. Trying to survive against these huge amount of freakers that will just pop out of nowhere. Did I get it right? They're called freakers, yeah? I think it's got a lot going for it, Days Gone. I haven't dipped into it since its launch, but it's had a bunch of stuff added over the time, a brand new survival mode, challenges and lots of updates and fixes. It's just come out on PC as well, so yeah, give it a shot. I think it just about deserves a place in the 50 survival games list. Another game I'm probably going to get a bit of flack for, Genesis Alpha 1, is a bit light on the common survival mechanics, but it has got one of the most important that I really love, which is Horde, or defending yourself. You have to pretty much customise and build your own spaceship, going down to planets, gathering resources, and hopefully making it back in time, while also trying to avoid picking up any nasty unwanted guests. From there, it's about defending your ship, sometimes having to cut off areas and making clones of yourself while mixing in alien DNA. It's got a lot going for it. It is a little bit more of a simulation with that FPS gameplay, but that survival against the hordes, I think, just about adds it to the survival genre. A great game, very underrated. Definitely give it a shot if you get a chance. Finishing off part 1 of my top ranked 50 survival games is Windbound at number 26. It wants to be a Studio Ghibli game mixed in with Breath of the Wild, and what you get is a okay experience. It's actually pretty cool going around on the seas, crafting and upgrading your raft. I'll bet it does get a little bit monotonous and boring trying to journey between procedurally generated lands. The game is tough as nails though. There are some pretty hardcore mechanics in it where you have to go back to the start if you die at the beginning, only reaching a very big save point where you'll be able to take your progress forward. So it's almost like a roguelike. It has got easier modes though, or even harder if you like more challenge, and it's definitely something I think you should try at least once. It's a gorgeous looking game, I love the art style. The combat does get a little bit dry and a little bit monotonous, but they've had plenty of updates to hopefully improve that over the last year, adding whole ways to play, brand new armor sets, weapons and refinements in that combat. Definitely something I've got to try soon and see how much improvement them updates have made, and maybe it'll be even higher next year. So there we go, that is part 1. Like I said, I really wanted to do this video a bit differently than I've done some of these in the past. I really wanted to be a bit more objective and give you a reasoning why I rank certain things. So yeah, I know a lot of the same games have the same scores. In that case, it's just about preference for me, what I actually prefer playing, what I've enjoyed the most, or what I have played the most of. You could argue that just because it's a survival game, it shouldn't maybe get so many points, but I know a lot of you guys can put up with a lot of bugs, a lot of issues, as long as the survival mechanics are pretty decent. Hence why I tried to separate it a little bit. But I also did want to recognise that so many of these games run really poorly on consoles, and so that means I need to be fair and list actually some points so you guys know whether or not it's one to avoid for now until it maybe improves in the future, or maybe never. If I haven't already upset you, then make sure you tune in for part 2. That's going to be coming very, very soon. And as always, stay tuned. Like I said, I've covered survival games now for 5 years on this channel. I've shown every single console survival game that has launched in that time, give you either some impressions, gameplay guides, or reviews. So hopefully I'll carry on doing that for many more years to come. Until next time, ratbags, laters.